Hello. This is Morel Bernard with the continuation of the story, Dracula. Yes, Dracula. And by the way, please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to Study Code channel and please share the videos. Let's continue with Dracula. Last words were, the reaction came in excessive pallor as she turned imploring eyes on me. I smiled and nodded and laid my finger on my lips with a sigh. She sank back amid her pillows. Van Helsing returned in a couple of hours and presently said to me, "Now, you go home and eat much and drink enough. Make yourself strong. I stay here tonight, and I shall sit up with little miss myself. You and I must watch the case, and we must have none other to know. I have grave reasons. No, do not ask them. Think what you will. Do not fear to think even the most not probable. Good night." In the hall, two of the maids came to me and asked if they, or either of them, might not sit up with Miss Lucy. They implored me to let them, and when I said it was Dr. Van Hesling's wish that either he or I should sit up, they asked me quite piteously to intercede with a foreign gentleman. I was much touched by their kindness. Perhaps it is because I'm weak at present, and perhaps it was on Lucy's account that their devotion was manifested, for over and over again have I seen similar instances of woman's kindness. I got back here in time for a late dinner, went my rounds, all well, and set this down whilst waiting for sleep. It is coming. 11th September. This afternoon I went over to Hillingham, found Van Helsing in excellent spirits, and Lucy much better. Shortly after I had arrived, a big parcel from abroad came for the Professor. He opened it with much impressment, assumed, of course, and showed a great bundle of white flowers. "These are for you, Miss Lucy," he said. "For me? Oh, Dr. Van Helsing." "Yes, my dear, but not for you to play with. These are medicines." Here Lucy made a wry face. "Nay, but they are not to take in a decoction or in nauseous form. So you need not snub that so charming nose, or I shall point out to my friend Arthur what woes he may have to endure in seeing so much beauty that he so loves so much distort. Aha, my pretty miss, that bring the so nice nose all straight again. This is medicinal, but you do not know how. I put him in your window. I make pretty wreath and hang him round your neck so that you sleep well. Oh yes, they, like the lotus flower, make your trouble forgotten. It smells so like the waters of Lethe and of that fountain of youth that the conquistadors sought for in the Floridas and find him all too late." Whilst he was speaking, Lucy had been examining the flowers and smelling them. Now she threw them down, saying with half laughter and half disgust, "Oh, Professor, I believe you are only putting a joke on me. Why, these flowers are any common garlic." To my surprise, Van Helsing rose up and said with all his sternness, his iron jaw set and his bushy eyebrows meeting, "No trifling with me. I never jest. There is grim purpose in all I do, and I warn you that you do not thwart me Take care, for the sake of others, if not for your own." Then seeing poor Lucy scared, as she might well be, he went on more gently. "Oh, little miss, my dear, do not fear me. I only do for your good. But there's much virtue to you in those so common flowers. See, I place them myself in your room. I make myself the wreath that you are to wear. But hush, no telling to others that make so inquisitive questions. We must obey, and silence is a part of obedience. And obedience is to bring you strong and well into loving arms that wait for you. Now sit while. Come with me, friend John, and you shall help me deck the room with my garlic, which is all the way from Harlem, where my friend Vanderpool raised herb in his glass houses all the year. I had to telegraph yesterday, or they would not have been here." He went into the room, taking the flowers with us. The professor's actions were certainly odd and not to be found in any pharmacopoeia that I ever heard of. First, he fastened up the windows and latched them securely. Next, taking a handful of the flowers, he rubbed them all over the sashes, as though to ensure that every whiff of air that might get in would be laden with the garlic smell. Then the wisp he rubbed all over the jamb of the door, above, below, and at each side, and round the fireplace in the same way. It all seemed grotesque to me, and presently I said, "Well, Professor, I know you always have a reason for what you do, but this certainly puzzles me. It is well we have no skeptic here, or he would say that you were working some spell to keep out an evil spirit." "Perhaps I am," he answered quietly, as he began to make the wreath which Lucy was to wear round her neck. We then waited whilst Lucy made her toilet for the night. And when she was in bed, he came and himself fixed the wreath of garlic round her neck. The last words he said to her were, "Take care you do not disturb it. And even if the room feel close, do not tonight open the window or the door." "I promise," said Lucy. "And thank you both 1,000 times for all your kindness to me. Oh, what have I done to be blessed with such friends?" As we left the house in my fly, which was waiting, Van Helsing said, "Tonight I can sleep in peace, and sleep I want. 2 nights of travel, much reading in the day between, and much anxiety on the day to follow, and a night to sit up without no wink. Tomorrow, in the morning, early you call for me, and we come together to see our pretty miss. So much more strong for my spell, which I have work. Ho, ho." He seemed so confident that I, remembering my own confidence 2 nights before, and with the baneful result, felt awe and vague terror. It must have been my weakness that made me hesitate to tell it to my friend, but I felt it all the more, like unshed tears. Lucy Westerner's Diary, 12 September. How good they all are to me. I quite love that dear Dr. Van Helsing. I wonder why he was so anxious about these flowers. He positively frightened me, he was so fierce, and yet he must have been right, for I feel comfort from them already. Somehow I do not dread being alone tonight, and I can go to sleep without fear. I shall not mind any flapping outside the window. Oh, the terrible struggle that I have had against sleep so often of late. the pain of the sleeplessness, or the pain of the fear of sleep, with such unknown horrors as it has for me. How blessed are some people whose lives have no fears, no dreads, to whom sleep is a blessing that comes nightly and brings nothing but sweet dreams. Well, here I am tonight, hoping for sleep, and lying like Ophelia in the play, with virgin crants and maiden strewmeats. I never liked garlic before, but tonight it is delightful. There is peace in its smell. I feel sleep coming already. Good night, everybody. Dr. Seward's Diary, 13th September. Called at the Berkeley and found Van Hesselin as usual up to time. The carriage ordered from the hotel was waiting. The professor took his bag, which he always brings with him now. Let all be put down exactly. Van Hesselin and I arrived at Hillingham at 8 o'clock. It was a lovely morning. The bright sunshine and all the fresh feeling of early autumn seemed like the completion of nature's annual work. The leaves were turning to all kinds of beautiful colours, but had not yet begun to drop from the trees. When we entered, we met Mrs. Westerner coming out of the morning room. She's always an early riser. She greeted us warmly and said, "You will be glad to know that Lucy's better. The dear child is still asleep. I looked into her room and saw her, but did not go in, lest I should disturb her." The professor smiled and looked quite jubilant. He rubbed his hands together and said, "Aha, I thought I had diagnosed the case. My treatment is working." To which she answered, "You must not take all the credit to yourself, Doctor. Lucy's state this morning is due in part to me." "How do you mean, ma'am?" asked the professor. "Well, I was anxious about the dear child in the night and went into her room. She was sleeping soundly, so soundly that even my coming did not wake her. But the room was awfully stuffy. There were a lot of horrible, strong-smelling flowers about everywhere, and she had actually a bunch of them round her neck. I feared that the heavy odour would be too much for the dear child in her weak state. So I took them all away and opened a bit of the window to let them in a little fresh air. You will be pleased with her, I'm sure." She moved off into her boudoir, where she usually breakfasted early. As she had spoken, I watched the professor's face and saw it turn ashen grey. He had been able to retain his self-command whilst the poor lady was present, for he knew her state and how mischievous a shock would be. He actually smiled on her as he held open the door for her to pass into a room. But the instant she had disappeared, he pulled me, suddenly and forcibly, into the dining room and closed the door. Then, for the first time in my life, I saw Van Hesselin break down. He raised his hands over his head in a sort of mute despair, and then beat his palms together in a helpless way. Finally he sat down in a chair and, putting his hands before his face, began to sob, with loud, dry sobs that seemed to come from the very racking of his heart. Then he raised his arms again, as though appealing to the whole universe. "God, God, God," he said, "what have we done? What has this poor thing done, that we are so sore beset? Is there fate amongst us still, sent down from the pagan world of old, that such things must be, and in such way? This poor mother, all unknowing, and all for the best as she think, does such thing as lose her daughter body and soul, and we must not tell her. We must not even warn her, or she die, and then both die. Oh, how we are beset. How are all the powers of the devils against us? Suddenly he jumped to his feet. Come, he said. Come, we must see an act. Devils or no devils, or all the devils at once, it matters not. We fight him all the same. He went to the hall door for his bag, and together we went up to Lucy's room. Once again I drew up the blind, whilst Van Hessling went towards the bed. This time he did not start as he looked on the poor face with the same awful waxen pallor as before. He wore a look of stern sadness and infinite pity. As I expected, he murmured, with that hissing inspiration of his which meant so much. Without a word he went and locked the door, and then began to set out on the table the instruments for yet another operation of transfusion of blood. I had long ago recognized the necessity and begun to take off my coat, but he stopped me with a warning hand. No, he said. Today you must operate. I shall provide. You are weakened already. As he spoke, he took off his coat and rolled up his shirt sleeve. Again the operation. Again the narcotic. Again some return of colour to the ashy cheeks and the regular breathing of healthy sleep. This time I watched whilst Van Hessling recruited himself and rested. Presently he took an opportunity of telling Mrs. Westerner that she must not remove anything from Lucy's room without consulting him, that the flowers were of medicinal value, and that the breathing of their odour was a part of the system of cure. Then he took over the care of the case himself, saying that he would watch this night and the next, and would send me word when to come. After another hour, Lucy waked from her sleep, fresh and bright, and seemingly not much the worse for her terrible ordeal. What does it all mean? I'm beginning to wonder if my long habit of life amongst the insane is beginning to tell upon my own brain. Lucy Westerner's diary, 17th September. 4 days and nights of peace. I'm getting so strong again that I hardly know myself. It is as if I had passed through some long nightmare and had just awakened to see the beautiful sunshine and feel the fresh air of the morning around me. I have a dim half remembrance of long, anxious times of waiting and fearing, darkness in which there was not even the pain of hope to make present distress more poignant, and then long spells of oblivion, and the rising back to life as a diver coming up through a great press of water. Since, however, Dr. Van Hessling has been with me, all this bad dreaming seems to have passed away. The noises that used to frighten me out of my wits, the flapping against the windows, the distant voices which seemed so close to me, the harsh sounds that came from I know not where, and commanded me to do I know not what, have all ceased. I go to bed now without any fear of sleep. I do not even try to keep awake. I have grown quite fond of the garlic, and a boxful arrives for me every day from Haarlem. Tonight, Dr. Van Hessling is going away, as he has to be for a day in Amsterdam. But I need not be watched. I'm well enough to be left alone. Thank God for Mother's sake and dear Arthur's, and for all our friends who have been so kind. I shall not even feel a change, for last night Dr. Van Hessling slept in his chair a lot of the time. I found him asleep twice when I awoke, but I did not fear to go to sleep again, although the boughs or bats or something napped almost angrily against the window panes. The Pall Mall Gazette, 18 September. The Escaped Wolf. Perilous adventure of our interviewer. Interview with a keeper in the zoological gardens. After many inquiries and almost as many refusals, and perpetually using the words Pall Mall Gazette as a sort of talisman, I managed to find the keeper of the section of the zoological gardens in which the wolf department is included. Thomas Builder lives in one of the cottages in the enclosure behind the Elephant House and was just sitting down to his tea when I found him. Thomas and his wife are hospitable folk, elderly, and without children, and if the specimen I enjoyed of their hospitality be of the average kind, their lives must be pretty comfortable. The keeper would not enter what he called business until the supper was over, and we were all satisfied. Then, when the table was cleared and he had lit his pipe, he said, "Now, sir, you can go on and ask me what you want. You'll excuse me refusing to talk of perfusial subjects afore meals. I gives the wolves and the jackals and the hyenas in all our section their tea afore I begin to ask them questions." "How do you mean, ask them questions?" I queried, wishful to get him into a talkative humour. "Hitting of them over the head with a pole is one way. Scratching of their ears is another, when gents as is flush wants a bit of a show off to their gals. I don't so much mind the fust, the itching with a pole afore I chucks in their dinner. But I waits till they've had their sherry and coffee, so to speak, afore I tries on with the ear scratching. Mind you," he added philosophically, "there's a deal of the same nature in us as in them, they're animals. Here's you a coming and axing of me questions about my business, and I that grumpy like that only for your bloomin' quid I seem you blowed fuss for I'd answer. Not even when you ask me sarcastic, like if I'd like you to ask the superintendent, if you might ask me question, without offence, did I tell you to go to hell. You did. And when you said you'd report me for using of obscene language that was hitting me over the head, but the half quid made them all right, I weren't going to fight. So I waited for the food, and did with my owl as the wolves and lions and tiger does. But love your art, now that the old woman has stunk a chunk of her tea cake in me, and rinsed me out with her bloomin' old teapot, and I've lit up, you may scratch my ears for all you're worth, and won't get even a growl out of me. Drive along with your questions. I know what you're coming at. That here escaped wolf. Exactly. I want you to give me your view of it. Just tell me how it happened. And when I know the facts, I'll get you to say what you consider was the cause of it, and how you think the whole affair will end. All right, Governor. This here is about the whole story. That 'ere wolf, what we call Dracula, was one of 3 grey ones that came from Norway to Janrax, which we bought off him 4 years ago. He was a nice, well-behaved wolf that never gave no trouble to talk of. I'm more surprised at him for wanting to get out nor any other animal in the place. But there, you can't trust wolves, no more nor women. Don't you mind him, sir, broke in Mrs. Tom with a cheery laugh. He's got mind in the animals, so long that blessed if he ain't like a old wolf itself. But there ain't no harm in him. Why not join me? Join me for the next video. Join me for the next video of Dracula. Join me for the next video of Dracula. And by the way, please subscribe to the channel and please share the video. Join me for the next video. Join me for the next video. I'll see you then. Okay, we're all then. Bye now. Bye.